Hello guys, and welcome on back to She's Diabetic. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrea. I have been a type 1 diabetic for over 19 years, and this is just a channel all about my life with type 1 diabetes, some tips, some tricks, some hacks, positivity through it all that kind of stuff. So if you're new here, welcome, and if you're returning, welcome on back. So in today's video, I want to talk about the concept of carb counting. I'm very conscious that on my channel, sometimes I'm referring to concepts and techniques that have been taught to me and I've sort of absorbed over many years of living with the condition, but it's not the case for everyone. Or maybe you're newly diagnosed and you're just getting to grips with these basics, or maybe they've never been presented to you at all. So today, I wanted to just share with you guys what I've learned and the very, very basic starting building blocks of learning how to carb count. So to start with, what the heck is carb counting and why is it important? Carb counting, which is short for carbohydrate counting, is a way to calculate how much insulin you should dose given the carbohydrate content of a meal or snack. So what's the deal with carbs and why are they so important when it comes to dosing insulin? Well, almost all carbohydrates break down into glucose once digested by the body, and glucose has a significant impact on blood sugar. Therefore, once you know your own personal insulin to carb ratio, and we'll get to that in a minute, then this can be a very, very effective tool for managing and dosing insulin and type 1 diabetes. So I touched on something there when I just said your personal insulin to carb ratio. Very important before we go any further, carb counting is not a one-size-fits-all technique. There is a very important, the most important piece, and that is to know what your personal insulin to carb ratio is. So for example, if you eat 15 grams of carbohydrate, how much insulin do you personally need? For myself, personally, I tend to have a 1 unit of insulin for every 15 grams of carbohydrate that I eat. But that's just personal. That's just me. Yours almost certainly will be different, and it's very, 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 very important that you work this out with your healthcare provider, your endocrinologist, your nutritionist. You really need to rely on these people to help you find your insulin sensitivity point or your insulin to carb ratio. So here, I can teach you how to carb count, but when it comes to your personal dosages of insulin, it is very important that you speak to your healthcare provider before implementing this, because it is not a one-size-fits-all policy. Once you know how to carb count and you know what your personal ratio is, then this can be a really amazing tool. But that knowing of your personal ratio is a very, very, very important piece and not to be overlooked. And not something that I can tell you. I'm not a healthcare provider. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just a girl with a YouTube channel. So really, really urge you to go to your healthcare provider if you want to start carb counting and say, I need to figure out my insulin sensitivity factor or my insulin to carb ratio. So go do that and then come back to me. So I've got some foods here and I'm gonna bring you in closer and we're all gonna have a really in-depth look at that nutrition label for these foods and do some example calculations given my personal carbohydrate ratio. First up, I have this 4-pack of Corn Thins. Now you can see at the front, they do have some information, but it does not have carbohydrate content. So what we're gonna do with this is flip it over and take a look at the nitty-gritty here. Now there are 2 ways to count carbohydrates. You can count them by weight and you can count them by serving size. So here you can see they list per 100 grams and here by the serving size, which they've deemed as 4 thins. So let's take a look because they have the serving size and that is always way easier in some ways to count. Let's take a look at the serving size. So you go down here and you want to find the word carbohydrate. Go across, you see it's 85.5 per 100 grams, but we're ignoring that at the moment. We're going to go straight across to what it is per 4 thins. And as you can see there, that is 25.7 grams of carbohydrate. So let's do some calculations here. If I were to plan to eat these 4 corn cakes, I would take the total carbohydrate amount for the 4 thins, which would be 25.7, and divide it by 15, because as you recall, my insulin sensitivity ratio is 1 unit of insulin for every 15 grams of carbohydrate. So that results in a total insulin dosage of 1.7 units. So let's practice with another food. This is a coconut and almond butter raw protein bar, and they're really yummy. I love them so much. So you flip this over and you find the nutrition facts on the back. Now, this label looks a little bit different to the other label. They all have their own sort of style and sometimes languages, as you can see. Again, you've got the weight and you've got the per 50 grams, which is a whole bar. So with this one, what you're going to want to do, if I were to, again, plan to eat the whole bar, I would go down, find the carbohydrate, which is 20 grams, and start the calculations all over again. So if I were to eat this whole bar, which I would because it's simply delicious, I would take 20, divide that by 15, and get a suggested insulin dosage of 1.3 units. And just to throw one more curveball your way, I went and grabbed this out of the fridge. This is an unsweetened almond milk. So again, as you can see here, classic, we have some, and this happens a lot in the UK, some nutrition information on the front, but that is not inclusive of carbohydrates, so we have to turn it over and take a look on the back. And as you can see, there is only a per weight description here. There's not a serving size. So per 100 milliliters, and this contains 1 liter, so there would be 10 servings in this if 100 milliliters were a serving. And you go down, find the carb. Oh, wait, there's no carbs. There's no carbs. So this would be a freebie in my world. Yours might be different. Again, you got to speak to your doctor. But there are 0 grams of carbohydrate in this, and therefore no need to count it in your insulin calculations. Again, just in my experience, not to be confused with yours, because we're all different. So I hope that was useful to you guys, taking a little bit of a closer look at those nutrition labels, where to find the information, and how to dose given the example carbohydrate ratio I used. But again, and can't stress this enough, please figure out your own ratio with your healthcare provider. Now sure, you may be asking, okay, great, if you have a nutrition label I can do this, but what about things that don't have a nutrition label? And what about when I'm eating out and I just have no idea what's going on the plate? Well, those are 2 concepts I definitely intend on attacking, but not in this video. Those are things that will come. Please keep an eye out for that as I'm working on those videos. But for now, I just wanted to present the very basic nuts and bolts of carb counting, because you gotta have a foundation to start on, because some of you may not have ever heard of this concept, or you may have heard of it, but you never really got properly explained the exact idiosyncrasies of it. I know for me personally, I wasn't explained carbohydrate counting until like kind of 8 years into my diagnosis, into my having type 1 diabetes. So if you haven't been made familiar with the concept, please, please, please don't feel like, oh my gosh, this is like something I should have known and everybody's doing it. No, not at all. Please don't feel that way. But for this video, just to reiterate, just wanted to cover the nuts and bolts, and we'll get into the more elaborate, more kind of advanced carb counting in other videos. So keep an eye out for those. And if you are really anxious to know more about carb counting and you're like, Andrea, please, no, I need to know more right now. Well, don't worry, I have you covered. Up above, I will be linking a day in the life where I kind of put carb counting into action and even show some carb counting for things that do not have nutrition labels. So check that out up above or down below in the description box if you want to get more in depth with the carb counting right now. Otherwise, keep an eye out for those videos, and until then, I wish you a wonderful day wherever you are in this world. I wish you straight CGM lines, great blood sugars, and correct carbohydrate dosing and ratios. But most importantly, I wish you a happy, healthy mind with it all. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.